Hey everybody, this is Alejandro with La Lucha, and we have a new album entitled Everybody Wants to Rule the World, and we recorded it for Arbors Records. It's coming out on June 12th, and we wanted to check in with a really good friend of ours who happened to produce the record and also play on the record.
Excellent. So to introduce our guest, we are going to play a little game. It's called Four Truths and a Lie. Alejandro already gave away some of the answers. So he is one, a clarinetist. Two, he played synthesizer on the album. Three, he's a mahjong expert. And four, he produced the album. Maybe throughout the interview, we'll find out which ones are true or false, but please welcome Ken Peplowski.
Let me put away my tiles now. I'll just...
Excellent. Thank you so much for being here with us, Ken. We had an absolute blast making this album with you, Ken, not only as a performer, but as a producer. In addition to actually just playing the music, we had so much fun just laughing and sharing stories and memes and emails and jokes throughout the actual, until the recording session and even after as well. So today we want to share some stories related to the session, talk about some of the tunes, and also some of the guest artists that that you've had a chance to play with for many years, and that were some that are new to us. So I guess the first question I would say is, do you remember the first time you met us or the conversation that we had leading up to us working together?
Yeah, I think, and you may have a different story, but I think I met the three of you at the Clearwater Jazz Party or Jazz Fest. I can't remember what they called it exactly, but
Suncoast, yeah.
yes, but I walked past the room that you were playing, and it was a very noisy room, and I worked that room too, and the trick is just to ignore all that and just play, and you guys did, and I was just taken by the variety of your sets and weird cover versions and just a whole different approach, weird in the best way, and a different approach to playing jazz and a real sense of joy and in the music, and so I think that's how we first met, and people had recommended that I listen to you guys too. There was a little bit of a buzz about the group, so.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the three of us had definitely seen you perform on many occasions. You and I actually worked together on on a few occasions, Dick Hyman's 90th birthday celebration in Sarasota. We were both on that show.
That's right.
And backstage, we talked briefly, and I was saying, oh, I have this band. I was just like talking us up to you. And you said, hey, we should make a record where we play some like 90s tunes. It was just like a passing thing. And to me, I went to the guys like that night. I was like, Ken said that one day he would make an album with us and we could like do some 90s tunes and 80s tunes, and it would be super cool. He'd be perfect for this.
Look, we've had these conversations. There's nothing wrong with the concept, but I think by this time in jazz history, we possibly have had enough of straight ahead jazz trio recordings, and just the regular, let's play some tunes, trade at the end with the drums, and so I have a low boredom threshold, and I think that the three of you probably do too, and so it's fun to come together and think, well, let's just do what we want to do and do something different and do it honestly, and I think people will get the message. And it's not, I always say this, it's not, if you look at jazz music, fans get so segmented into what they like and don't like, but think about the earliest jazz recorded in the 1900s to John Coltrane and Ornette Coleman in the 1960s. That's only 60 some years, period.
Wow. Yeah.
It's not that much time, so it's not that much of a stretch to go from there to there, and then maybe from Coltrane to like, let's play some contemporary songs, or let's play some original songs, or let's play some treatments of pop songs. I think people sometimes just need to be held by the hand a little bit, and you can, and it's the fun approach. You can take them by the hand and say, let's go down this road together. It's not going to be dangerous. You can, you'll see there's not much of a leap from Houston person playing the blues to us covering Everybody Wants to Rule the World.
Yeah. Yeah, but a lot of your own personal records, I haven't seen too many like great American songbook standards, but rather what we would call substandards, some kind of those tunes that have been lost or forgotten, and even crossover pop tunes like the Beach Boys, and you did some stuff from Willy Wonka, Cheer Up Charlie, which is fantastic. And we feel the same exact way when we were putting this record together, which was we wrote a lot of original music, which we love the treatment that you did on them. But you were also really open to us kind of presenting our own substandards from the pop world. So we did have Beach Boys tune. We did have a She's Like the Wind from Dirty Dancing, a Patrick Swayze tune.
Yeah, I think that's a nice thing because, again, there's so much to choose from. If you're covering somebody else's material, let's just take my thing. If I'm going to play a Harold Arlen song, why play the same one that everybody else plays when he wrote hundreds of songs? And She's Like the Wind, you'll probably remember in the studio, I'm listening to this going, what is this song from? Because it's so nice. Yeah. And then we all listened to the original recording, and frankly, I much prefer your version of it, but you guys turned it into something completely different, and a really great treatment of that.
Thank you. That was part of why it was such a pleasure to work with you, that you understood where we were coming from. We went through the whole, we're kind of modern players in the sense that we went through jazz school, the institution, that we met in jazz school, and we were taught to play 2-5-1s and all that stuff. But we were also very lucky that we had a few musicians that kind of retired to this area. Buster Cooper, who played with Duke Ellington for years, and everybody, and John Lamb, who lives here and is a mentor of ours. And so it was a really cool thing because we were kind of there. So we got a good kind of combination of like being there with some of the older musicians who schooled us, in the bandstand. But then we also grew up in a completely different generation, we had our own music. So it's funny going back to She's Like the Wind. It's kind of like, to me personally, I grew up with two older sisters, so they just loved Dirty Dancing, in the 80s, and it's a song that's been in my head forever, and it's kind of like, I was like, oh man, we should do something with this. It's something that, as cheesy as the song may be in its own, and that's the beauty of being able to interpret it instrumentally, that to be able to bring it and you give it its own voice, you kind of take the melody and make it own thing, which is one of the things, another one of the tracks that we recorded that features you, Don't Talk, Put Your Head on My Shoulder, the Beach Boys. I've always loved we've always loved the melodies that Brian Wilson writes, especially in that mid-period of Pet Sounds and all that stuff. And, that was more of some music that you would have grown up with around that time. So what's your approach when you take a song like that doesn't really come from the jazz repertoire? How do you run it through the Peplowski filter?
Well, my thing is, as opposed to the three of you, I don't consider myself much of a composer. I write things occasionally, and my criteria is if I can find something by somebody else I'd rather play, I put that on the record. So I'm always looking for material that I can, filter through my own experiences and try to make my own. And it's difficult sometimes with the music I grew up on, the Beatles and the Beach Boys, and even, Elvis Costello and Squeeze and all these different bands that I love, Bob Dylan. So I have to find something that I think I can make my own with respect to the original. And again, what I liked about She's Like the Wind, I don't think you should even dismiss it as a cheesy song, because it's not. If you like it, it has validity to you. I think the secret is playing something honestly and really meaning it, as opposed to what bothers me sometimes is I call them the shaven-headed piano trios of today. We're not you, John. You're not there yet. No, but they treat, they all cover Radiohead.
Yeah.
It's The Law, and Joni Mitchell, and but they treat it almost ironically, those songs, or they stretch them out harmonically so much that it may as well be an original, and they're just using the cachet of saying now we're playing a Radiohead song. So I think the secret is to find your own way into that music as an interpreter, and and say to people, I like the song. Here it is. This is me, giving this experience of liking this song to people, as opposed to now we're going to do a funny version of a song from Dirty Dancing.
I think the three of us just really like melody. I've always really been into pop music. I was writing, pop sounding songs then and now. But I also love jazz. So the three of us just have this connection, which was, it doesn't matter if a song is good, it's good. And that's kind of how we approached this record. It's how we approached a lot of the originals as well, which was, we're just going to write a lot of songs and we're going to put them through the La Lucha filter. And that was also really excellent to not only have the three of us judge those arrangements and originals, but send them to you. And then you had your honest feedback saying, like, this works, this kind of works, let's see what we can do with this. And so when Rachel Domber approached us about doing this album, we were prepared to go into doing, arrangements of standards. And then she said the thing that we absolutely loved, which was, I want you to do you. You don't even have to call it jazz. I want some of your original music. You can do your arrangements, whatever you want to do. And she said, put together a dream list of, guests, including a producer. So the three of us immediately went to our place of sanity, which is Panera, and we made a list. We're very good at making lists.
Yeah.
So we threw out names, and no joke, the top of the producer list was Ken Peplowski, and also as a performer. And I don't think we even went to you. We had mentioned it to Rachel as, hey, here's some names. And within a day, you called us, and we had a conversation. And it was the coolest thing for you to say, hey, I'm interested in, I heard that you might want me to play on your record, but I would love to produce this record. And that was the coolest thing for us, for you being open to that.
To be honest, part of my calling you and offering myself as a producer was almost a protective instinct, because I didn't want somebody else coming in and making you lean in the other direction, and doing things that, would have put you in a much more conservative musically, kind of a straitjacket. And as I said, I think the beauty of your group is that it stands out. It's different. It's and you guys can swing too. I've used La Lucha as kind of the house rhythm section the last couple of years for the Sarasota Jazz Festival, and everybody that's played with you is thrilled with the band, and so it's not that you can't play straight ahead jazz, but I think what makes your trio unique is that you do so much else and bring so much else to the table. So that's really
Thank you.
An honor to work with you guys.
Thank you. Well, I have a question for John, which also is a question for Ken. And it is going back to sort of instrumentation. And in addition to different, we have Chuck Red on vibraphone, Houston Person on saxophone, Melissa Aldana plays saxophone, and Diego Figueredo is on guitar. Ken, you are also doubling not only on clarinet, but you are playing keyboard instruments on this record. And so that's a cool collaboration between you and John, because you two were like in the room together, standing at a synthesizer, or you were playing Fender Rhodes. Mm-hmm. I want to talk a little bit about sort of when we were recording, like none of this was, some of this was planned a little bit, saying, hey, I think we should add some synth, but it was like, Ken, you got up from the console and you're like, I'm going to go in and record Fender Rhodes on this, or this needs a synthesizer. John, can you help me? I want John and Ken to kind of like talk about those moments.
Yeah, I thought it was great because we were listening to the take, And Ken had this idea. It's like, hey, I think there should be some kind of Fender Rhodes response in between the piano melody of She's Like the Wind. And I was too in the song, and like I wasn't able to speak with myself and be like, hello, hi, how are you, in a musical way. And so Ken was like, here, let me be the other person, and I will respond to the phrases of the melody. So it was really cool. So I was like, yes, this is great. And that's how that happened. What was your mindset when you were playing that, Ken?
Well, if you remember, I think I said to you, I said, John, you're overqualified for this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I thought it needed something very simple and kind of funky, and I had it in my head, and
Yeah.
I have, clearly, obviously, very limited skills at the piano, but I think I knew what to do on there, and so thank you for, just letting me give it a shot, and it was fun, yeah, I mean, I approached the way I played Fender Rhodes on that like it was a pop thing as opposed to a jazz thing.
Mm.
And you also, the synthesizer actually came in on Space Oddity. You had this really cool idea of using some synth sounds well, what triggered that in your mind? How did you come up with that idea?
Well, I studied electronic music for 2 years in college, and
Oh, cool.
Nice.
and this was real, serious electronic music composition. So you're not working with a synthesizer with pre-programmed stuff. You're making sound waves, and so you're writing compositions around kind of sound pictures, not notes. And so I've always been interested in that. And of course, as you guys know, I'm a big fan of the Beatles, and they didn't use a
Hmm.
lot of synthesizers, but they used them very sparingly, mostly on the Abbey Road album. And when they did, it really meant something. And for Space Oddity, for some reason, I thought and then these little again influenced by the Beatles on the Revolver album, like almost a backwards seagull sound, which was another synth sound that John was kind enough to help me figure out. But that, so we just kind of put those in. We didn't want to overdo it, but just enough to add a little bit of color.
Yeah, I loved where you placed those when you were mixing the album and producing. Um, that was great, especially at the end. The song ends and it comes back, and it's like Major Tom's still out there,
Yeah.
still out there. Oh my gosh, that was so haunting to me. And when I
Well,
heard it for the first time, I freaked out. I was like, oh my God.
well, thank you. I mean, that's the fun thing of doing a real collaborative thing like that. And I know you guys do the same thing. A song is not just the music; it's the lyrics and music. And even if you don't memorize all the lyrics, you think about it. And again, there's a haunting quality to that song. Ultimately, that I think you and I guess we captured in certain ways.
Yeah. I wanna jump to having a conversation about the generational jump and gap on this record, which is I don't know. I think the three of us have always felt that when different musicians of different ages work together, it works a lot better than when everybody's like on the same playing field, which is why it's really great to have you as a producer. But we had three generations of reed players: Melissa Aldana, yourself, and Houston Person. And it was such a phenomenal opportunity to work with all three of you and to have three like major, tenor titans in the room. In addition that everybody plays multiple reed instruments. So, and also Diego Figueiredo was on the session, which you've also have a collaborative project with him. So I want to talk about kind of like that generational jump and gap, if it's something you're aware of, why does it work or does it not work? and what it was like working with Houston Person and Melissa.
Well, first of all, I think that one of the great things about not just jazz music, but probably all kinds of music is musicians don't think about race, gender, or age. We just don't. We don't have those barriers. I mean, there's exceptions, of course, but I don't think we think about that stuff because there's a lot of musicians in every field of music as they get older. I've always been fascinated by this. As they get older, maybe they lose a little bit of their technique, but they pare down what they have and find this extra beauty there. The same thing with visual artists. Picasso was down to just drawing simple lines that were almost more effective than his early paintings, and you see this over and over in the arts, and it's really interesting. There's exceptions. Dick Hyman is one, the piano player who hasn't lost anything in his 90s. He still can play like Art Tatum,
Yeah.
So I think musicians are always thinking about that kind of thing, like what can I do with the materials that I personally can bring, and it keeps us open and keeps us searching, and there's always a new wave of musicians to check out, and you have to, otherwise you're stagnant, and so I think there's a group of musicians, and it's probably the majority of musicians, that have this restless quality. And I think if you just ask them to try something different, some might at first be resistant, but they'll get into it and they'll really approach it from their experience. And the thing with Houston, for example, you wrote a line for him, and actually he and I, because I know him so well, both thought the same thing, like, let's just have him fill in the gaps and you guys play the line and do his kind of funky stuff that he does, and it was beautiful, and so that's a kind of a collaborative thing between you and Houston. So that whole generation thing, I think it's all those categories, it's more caused by the outside world, writers, jazz writers, and they like to put people in boxes, and this person is this person is this, and but we generally don't think that way.
So I really, really love the idea of Everybody Wants to Rule the World, of creating the ghost voice for Melissa, where she was overdubbing saxophone and creating this like ulterior ego that was going back and forth with the melody. How did you come up with the idea for that? And you could talk about that. Okay.
Well, a lot of things with me, including in my own recordings, it happens in the moment. Like you could do all the pre-planning you want, but I think you have to be open to letting the light bulb come on at any time. And so listening to you guys, actually we had a rehearsal.
Yeah.
Listening to you play that song, it just struck me there was this haunting quality to the song, and I thought, and the original record was kind of drenched in reverb too, and I thought, how can we kind of recreate the vibe without aping what they did. So I thought of this, I think I even described it as like a voice from on high on the mountaintop, this little ghost voice chiming in, and that just popped into my head. And Melissa was really open to doing it too, and I thought she did an amazing job. She grasped what the whole concept right away, and she did an amazing job, catching that. And we put a lot of delay and reverb on her. So that's what happened. Sometimes I actually have a process, and maybe you guys can tell me if this works with you too. But I think through everything in my head. I'm sifting through all these things, but sometimes it's only the week before or a couple days before I literally wake up in the morning and the whole picture is there. Because I've just let my subconscious like sift through everything, and I trust that process. And knock on wood, it hasn't failed yet. So, but you have to really trust it and be open and aware when it kind of comes.
I wanted to go back really quick and talk about Don't Talk, because when we rehearsed it with you, it was the first time we played it. We didn't even go through the whole song. We just had an idea. We kind of worked on like, oh, maybe let's try this section. Maybe this chord will work at the end. But then while we were rehearsing it, you stopped and you're like, let's save it. Let's save it for the session and see what happens.
Yeah.
But what happened was you were playing a gorgeous solo. I mean, like we work on intricate changes and we work on, we have, but this was the only song where we're going to solo over 2 changes back and forth and we got lost. So, I mean, I know I got lost.
I was like floating in a blender.
Oh my God. Yeah. And but we knew that we had to keep going and trust had to happen, because we always do with La Lucha, we figured out how to get back to it, and we looked at you and you knew we were in this, this space world, and you gave us the most beautiful, perfect cue to just come back in, and we all took a breath together, and there were no overdubs, there was no retake of that, and we just had to trust each other.
Yes, it's all about seeing the forest as opposed to the individual trees, Yeah. And that, maybe that's, if I say so myself, that might be a generational thing too. But the reason I like a lot of old jazz records is because the mistakes are left in. And if we listen to those records the way we tend to record now, they'd never be released. You listen to a Billie Holiday record, oh, the trumpet player cracked that note, we got to redo that. The clarinetist is a little sharp, let's fix that. But you don't hear that. You just hear the whole picture. And I think sometimes we lose that spontaneous feeling. The beauty of modern technology is you can fix everything and you can really think carefully about the thing. And that's also the bad part of it too. Yeah. So again, I don't want to sound like a person railing against, modern jazz or whatever, but I find a lot of quote unquote modern jazz records boring because they're so sterile. First of all, the way the music's recorded, you hear every instrument separate entity instead of hearing it like a band, like you hear a band in a room. And second of all, people take the time and they fix every single note, and it's got this sterile quality to it, and it sounds kind of perfect, but it's lacking something, So I love the fact that you guys were more than willing to take some of that kind of old school approach and just say, well, fuck it. Sorry, I don't know if I can say it. Am I allowed to say it?
You can say
trademark.
All right. No, but just say, look, we don't care. We'll just leave it in, because it's a beautiful take, and it was a good feeling, and it went where it went, as opposed to where we thought it was going to go, and that's a nice thing, and I'm really glad that everybody's willing to have that attitude.
You had the talk with all of us at some point about like, oh, like this thing is not working, or we just have a false start on something, and you talked us into the fact that those false starts, or there was one tune where I dropped a stick twice, and
that's the
like
take
I'm
on the
extremely
record.
clumsy. And that's the take on the record, because you looked and you said, just trust me. Like it's, and you can hear it, but it's actually very cool. But I think that was
how
a
you
major
Bill
strength.
Moss said, hey, let's play a joke on Mark and make it really loud. That was perfect.
That's right.
No,
but
that-
it made you play something different that I would argue was better than probably what you might have played otherwise,
No, I agree listening back to it. Yeah.
Ken, I wanted to say that it was an absolute pleasure working with you on this record, and we hope to really be able to do the next one soon. It feels like ages ago because of everything that's been going on, but luckily with technology, when it works, we are able to share these experiences and kind of pick your brain, and we hope you're staying safe up there. I don't know if you guys have anything to add.
Yes, just thank you so much for everything, for your mentorship, for your friendship, for being a part of this record, and we can't wait to make another one with you.
Thank you, Ken. We look forward to playing more Mahjong over the internet with you throughout this quarantine.
But listen, guys, I had a great time doing this this record with you guys, and I look for you. Have to use me from now on. We're a team. That's
Absolutely.
it. And it was a great experience for me too. And also, I think we should all thank Rachel for just giving us complete freedom
Yes.
on this one.
Complete freedom and what would I say?
Unwavering.
Never ending bag of bagels.
That's right. Which
We never went bagel-less.
well, all that stuff helps though. The nice atmosphere and food, and she took care of everybody, put people up in hotels, and
Yeah.
it was
Couldn't have done it without her.
she was fantastic. And if you can go in as relaxed as possible, that really helps the recording. As long as they're sleeping too, but that's too relaxed, John. But everybody,
Yeah.
no, but it was. But Rachel really came through for all of us. I mean, she just nothing but encouragement, and you guys do what you want, and she's been fantastic like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thanks.